Please check your WhatsApp message. Good evening, everyone. It's already 6 p.m. I guess we'll be starting the session now as we await our mentors to join in and await some of our mentees to also join the call. So I welcome you all to week 3 of the third and first quarter of JIIPCC Mentorship and Internship program. And before starting the session, I would like for us to, I hope I can be heard.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay.
Yes, I can hear you.
Thank you. Okay, I see more people are joining the call. So welcome to those who are just joining in. Okay, so I would love to introduce our mentors for today. We'll be having 2 mentors on the call for this evening. And first off would be Mrs. Bernice Asian. Mrs. Bernice Asian, I'll be reading her profile. Okay, Mrs. Bernice Asian is a visionary in the field of fashion law with a multifaceted legal background and a deep commitment to excellence. Mrs. Asian has the significant strides in the fashion industry. Her educational journey stands as a testament to her dedication to mastering her craft. Mrs. Asian's passion for fashion law took her to the prestigious Milano Fashion Institute in Milan, Italy, where she honed her expertise on an international stage. She has also earned certification in intellectual property law from the World Intellectual Property Organization, WIPO, and advanced intellectual property valuation from the Intellectual Property Institute. As the founder of Cardinal Counsel, a leading fashion law firm in Lagos, Nigeria, Mrs. Asian has consistently demonstrated innovation and excellence. Her diverse clientele includes fashion and creative brands, startups, fashion technology, companies, investors, models, and influencers. Her ability to navigate the intricate intersection of law and fashion has solidified her reputation as a trusted legal advisor within the industry. Mrs. Asian's expertise encompasses various aspects of fashion law, including intellectual property rights, contract negotiation, employment law, and more. Her profound understanding of legal framework ensures that her guidance and education are tailored specifically to the fashion industry. Additionally, Ms. Asian holds a certificate in tax law from the Chartered Institute of Taxation of Nigeria. She is also a member of the Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators of Nigeria, an associate member of the Institute of Chartered Mediators and Conciliators and the Nigerian Bar, and she's currently in her final stage of completing her LLM at Bangkok University. Her commitment to advancing the field of fashion law is exemplified through her role as the founder of the Fashion Law Institute, the groundbreaking institution dedicated to addressing the gap in fashion law in Africa, advocating for legal reform, fostering accountability, and conducting essential research within the African fashion industry She actively participates as a speaker and facilitator at various fashion and creative industry events, training programs, and workshops. Mrs. Asian work continues to shape the future of fashion law in Africa and beyond. So that will be all for Mrs. Asian's profile. Moving forward to Mr. Samuel Oluwaseyi Arowosebe. Shay is the principal partner at Dealex Consult, a corporate and intellectual property law firm based in Abuja, Nigeria, serving clients cross-country and globally. The firm has advised hundreds of clients in the formation and maintenance of corporate entities and also safeguarding the intellectual property of individual and corporate entities. He's a facilitator at the Intellectual Property Institute Nigeria, where he teaches trademarks and copyright. Shay holds a Master of Laws degree in Intellectual Property Law and Policy. He is also an alumnus of the prestigious Lagos Business School. So that will be all for Mr. Shay. So moving forward to today, I think we have one of our mentors on the call, Mrs. Bernice Asian. I think she named herself as Fashion Law Institute. Okay, so good evening, Ma, and welcome to the call.
Hi. Okay. Hi, good evening.
Hi, Ma. Thank you for joining the call today. So I'll be handing the mic over to you to give us your presentation for today. Thank you very much, Ma, for joining in.
Okay, can you hear me? Sorry, hold on just one second.
Sorry, Ma, before starting, we would love to take a picture before it gets dark. So our mentees, please, can you kindly put on your cameras? We just take 2 minutes to take the pictures.
Can you hear me, please?
I can see Mr. Shay on the call. Thank you very much for joining, sir. Please,
right. Good evening.
Have everyone turn on their cameras. Take a picture.
Well,
Dennis, please, if you are done, could you let me know when you are done taking the pictures? Dennis, are you done with the pictures? Okay, so Ma, please, could you start your presentation? Thank you very much.
Okay, then I'm trying to share my screen. Oh, okay, can you see my screen now?
Yes, we can. Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. Okay, hello everybody. I mean I just joined. I'm sure that you probably read my bio, right? So my name is Bernice Asen, and I'm the founder of the Fashion Law Institute. We are a training center basically. And we help with the advocacy of policies, law around the fashion industry. We also help with the promotion of fashion law as a niche practice area. Right. So fashion law is one of the things that I'm very passionate about, obviously, because that's where the core of my practice is centered. So we decided to form the Fashion Law Institute because I noticed that, when I represent brands in the fashion industry, I spent my time teaching, talking, just really advocating for a lot of things. And I felt like it would be better to have a separate organization that was handling that rather than do that as a law firm's business. So it was important for us to carve that. And of course, because fashion law is exactly not as popular as it is abroad, right? So it was very important for us to have that so that we could actually share, the knowledge that I had, right? So we decided to form the Fashion Law Institute, and we've been operational since 3 years ago. Yeah, so I would just go straight to my slides. And I would also be rushing through it because I know that I have limited time, right? So fashion law as a practice area. I like to start by talking about the general specialization that exists in law. And how I understand it as a young lawyer is that there are industry specialization and there are subject matter specialization. Because a lot of times people like to think that specialization has to do with transaction and litigation and all of that. So yes, that exists, but I think that there is litigation everywhere that you go. So if you're thinking you want to jump into fashion because I don't want to go to court, I think you're wrong, right? Because you will litigate. I mean, if you look at the West, because I think if you look at internationally, they sort of like represent the future of fashion that we would actually get to. And you see that it is very heavy on litigation. People are litigating for people stealing their IP rights, infringing and the like. So you can see that there's heavy litigation happening in the fashion industry. So you have to understand that when it comes to subject matter specialization, it means you're picking a particular subject matter and you're specializing in that. And that's where IP falls in. If you want to specialize in IP, why not? But you can find IP in fashion, you can find IP in entertainment, you can find IP in any industry that you think about has intellectual property. That's subject matter. Litigation for me is a subject matter, right? Because you would find it anywhere. Technology is a subject matter. Sustainability is a subject matter. ESG is a subject matter, right? But when you say fashion, fashion is an industry where all of this subject matter will apply. So what do I mean by that? It means that as a fashion lawyer, you would be providing services or you would be required to do more than just IP. You would have to expend yourself in finance, in sustainability, in technology, international trade, environmental law. So it's not that, oh, I'm coming to fashion because I know IP. No, you have to understand the industry itself. So it's an industry specialization. So it's not like we're specializing in IP. That's why it's easy for us to go into fashion. Not exactly, right? I know that people have that kind of notion. It's not exactly wrong, but it's not just complete, so to speak. You would do so many other things other than IP. And to be honest, most of my presentation will cover a lot of things away from IP because I try to sort of like run away from that because I believe that from my practice, there are many. Yes, I provide IP services to fashion brands, but I like to always throw more light on the other areas, even though IP is foundational. I like to talk about other areas because I feel like when we are coming into the fashion space, we need more than just being an IP lawyer. Because if you look at it, right, with the stage of the stage of the industry where it is, if you register CAC, you register a fashion business and you do their trademark, you're done with fashion law if you're going to go with IP. Simple, right? But there is transaction, there's sustainability as a trend, there's technology that is happening, right? How do I now expand myself and my expertise and be relevant to the industry as it is, right? So that's like my introductory statement. So I'll just be talking about, like I mentioned, I've talked about socialization, laws and regulation, service you can offer as a fashion lawyer, then skills required and the importance of fashion, right? So I talked about specialization, industry specialization and subject matter specialization. I said that industry specialization is basically you focusing on an industry like health law, like fashion law, like entertainment, and saying that you're going to spread yourself across that industry, right? And subject matter is just key areas that will be relevant regardless of the industry. So yeah, overview of the fashion business. right? So fashion business is it's an all-encompassing. I don't know how to explain it. It's like there are different stages, right? Let me start with that. There are different stages to the fashion industry. There is the raw materials, there is the mining, there is the um um there's the production, right? There is the retailing, there is when it gets to the final consumer. It's different layers of an entire industry and an ecosystem, right? And for you to understand how laws play in that regard, you have to understand the entire ecosystem. That's how you can identify what the fashion law is, or what that law or what the regulation applies in that particular industry. So you have to understand what the fashion business is, how it goes from production, creation, marketing, retailing, and when the product actually gets to the final consumer. I like to talk about this because when I first started, it was almost like, oh, I've done IP, I've done registration. What exactly am I supposed to do when they tell me to do other things? How can IP apply to the product development stage? So when a fashion designer comes to you to say they have conceptualized their designs, what you have to say as a lawyer, what's your contribution? And I realized that as a lawyer, you have to be thinking about IP strategies. IP strategies is not just drafting contracts and registration or enforcement. Sometimes it's telling your client that if you make this design without imputing certain elements of your IP on it, it's going to be mainstream, it's going to be easily diluted, it's going to be easily infringed upon. I'll give you, for instance, for you to enjoy copyright in your design example, because I know that copyright will not exactly protect the design, but it can protect elements of the design. So you encourage your clients to incorporate, because sometimes you see that fashion brands in Nigeria trademark their brand, but it's only for their fancy bag. They have their logo covering, they just want to print it on their fancy bag. So somebody buys clothes for me and I have this fancy bag where I put the clothes in, and that's what trademark is for. No, trademark is a source identifier. It shows that it's from a particular brand, right? It's from a particular person, from a particular company, right? So it means that your design has to embody that for you to enjoy the provisions of the law, right? So it's encouraging your clients and telling them that this way you've done it. If you use this particular fabric, there's nothing that can be protected under it. So if you see now, if you look at the industry and like top players, you see that they are not incorporating their logos on their dresses. You're seeing that it is now, they think about the design of their fabric. It might not even be the logo, but their brand element is embedded on their fabrics. If you look at Bank Ekuku, if you look at Matafo, you see that they are doing things like that. That's because they understand that to enjoy the provisions of the law, right, they have to do X, Y, Z. Unlike when, they just sit down, cut clothes, play material, and that's it. And any other person can replicate it. Because once you are replicating something that is embedded with your brand element or acts, right, it can enjoy some level of copyright protection, right? So it's very important for you to understand how the business works, the various levels of this business, and how that you can apply the existing laws to it, and you can also advise your clients. And then the fashion industry has a lot of ethical connections, right? For instance, I released a campaign where I think it was Balenciaga that released a campaign one time and had a child with ropes all over it and teddy bears, and that was connoting. It was a sign of BDSM, so to speak, if you're familiar with that. And a lot of people kicked against that, right? So there's where you would represent certain brands and you have to overlook their campaigns and raise ethical issues for them, right? So it might not necessarily be illegal, but you have to understand what the ethical connotation of certain things in their campaign is as a lawyer. Or I'll give you a scenario of this brand, Deola Sego, when they released their collection in 2017. And you can see that they used white women as models. If it was done in 2024, I'm sure that, the Amcon Act by the provisions would apply. However, then there was no law against using white models, but people kicked against it, right? Because you're supposed to be promoting local content. In the defense of the designer, she's like, I operate in an international market where I want white people to buy my clothes. I want them to wear what I sell, right? If a white man, a black person can wear a suit, they should be able to buy Ashoki and the likes. But you see that people do not take that easy, because I'm like, what are you doing? You're trying to appropriate our culture. It even happened recently when somebody wore Iro and Buba or something, I think Ashoki, to their wedding, and they're not Yorubas, right? So there are a lot of ethical connotations that happen in the fashion industry that as a lawyer, you have to be aware to advise your clients on, so it might not be illegal, but it might have some issues around it that you advise on. So you have to understand the various stages of production and product development in the fashion industry for you to identify the laws that can apply, right? So that's like, an overview of understanding the various, nuances that happen in the fashion industry. So what then is fashion law? Fashion law is a specific field of law that deals with legal issues that impact the fashion industry. So across the value chain of the fashion industry, the entire ecosystem, any law that apply, that you would have to resort to in solving a fashion problem, right? It's for me and for a lot of people, fashion law. I'll make reference to, in the oil and gas sector, they are expected to have certain level of local content. So oil and gas companies should, when they're sourcing their items, like their jackets, their shoes, and their safety outfits, they have to source from a Nigerian company, right? And we do not have a lot of Nigerian companies manufacturing at that level, but there are a couple of them, right? There is Yogdin, who is the only shoe manufacturer to be certified under that particular law. But there's a law that actually says that they have to 80% of their production used by oil and gas company has to be made by local Nigerian companies. Those are ways, and there's a screening process, right? And if you're representing a manufacturer that manufactures shoes and those kind of things, you would be looking at those laws and the requirement that they have to meet, right? So that's also fashion law. So it depends on, like, it's depends on the clients you're dealing with. And I'll have to also say that when we say fashion, is a generic word to cover a lot of areas, right? Fashion is across a lot of things. There is beauty, there is jewelries, there is makeup, there's art. There's a lot of things that fashion covers. So do not limit it to only fashion business alone. That's clothes or apparel. It's textile, and it's really deep, right? So for you to understand fashion, you have to understand the entire ecosystem and how it operates and the various players and stakeholders for you to be able to advise accordingly and know where your expertise is actually needed. So I went ahead to identify certain myths, and since I started, I've been saying fashion law is really not about IP or only about IP, if I'm to correct that, right? Fashion law, people like to think that it's IP. So there is IP and there's fashion law under it. No, there's a broad industry of fashion and there's IP as a pillar, a very strong pillar at that, but it's not the only thing, right? Because like I mentioned before, when you have a fashion brand, yes, of course, because of the stage of our industry where we play and where, you see that when you have a brand, what you're doing for them is only registration and contracts and all of that. But there's more to that, right? There's more to a lot of things with the trend, with the sustainability trend that is happening, right? There's a lot of things to also consider and know as regards environmental law, right? There's also, even with the growth of sustainability, there's also the big player, and that's international trade, where people are trying to look at the principle of rules of origin, transparency, traceability, right? Those are key principles of the fashion industry when it comes to sustainability that you have to know and understand how international agreements work, right? So now sustainability is basically telling people that we want to know where you source, what exactly what exactly is the makeup of your material, and there's the requirement to disclose where it's coming from. So if you are going to be using people in Yaba market and you are selling in Italy, make sure that your labels states that you're sourcing from Nigeria, so that they know how you are actually taking care of. You're not killing somebody, you're not paying, instead of you to pay 1.5 per hour, you're paying 100 naira per hour per clothes. So how exactly are you treating labor, right? Sustainability is key. There's also technology, right? Most people who are innovating now in the fashion industry are not exactly designers, right? They are tech gurus that are trying to build solutions for the fashion industry, right? And you cannot exactly now say, oh, you have to be thinking about other things and how you apply. You have to be thinking about patents. You can't say, oh, patents do not apply anymore in the fashion industry. It's if you look at it holistically, you will see that also plays, because I know of a brand that is innovating in the fashion space where they have a product that can actually trace the life cycle of a particular dress, and brands are actually, trying to subscribe to that particular software where they can have like a policy that, how do I explain this? So there's what they call circularity. That's the life cycle of an entire product. That means the entire existence of when you make the dress, when it gets to the final consumer, and when the final consumer finishes using the dress, how it is disposed, right? So you are able to monitor that, okay, you have a policy where after they've bought the clothes, they've used it and they don't want to use it again, they want to throw it away. You have a take back policy where say you can return it and you get $1, you can return it and get $2. Those are like policies and softwares that people are actually building to build traceability and transparency in the fashion industry. So you would say, or you would not say that, oh, we don't have laws that would apply. There are laws that apply, but the problem is that we do not have a very robust industry that accommodates for that. But thanks to technology, that's slowly changing, right? So fashion law is about the business of fashion. It's more than just fashion. I mentioned now that, there are manufacturers of textiles here, maybe not at the scale of, the international standard, but there are people who have set up textile, people who are developing textile from the scratch, right? It's more than just, I'm going to cut and sew this particular design, and if somebody steals it, that's where I can actually advise. There's more to the fashion industry than just apparels, right? There is shoes, there's footwear, there's makeup, there is a lot of things. Even fashion houses internationally have hotels. There's lifestyle. LVMH is the biggest fashion conglomerate that you have in the world, and they do not only sell clothes. They have a lot of, they have perfumes, they have different things that, products that they have under their radar, right? They sell wine, they do a lot of things, right? So it's important that you understand that it's not that limited, right? It's not just fashion. It's not just sewing clothes. It's not just you and your tailor. It's more than just that. But I understand that, in the fashion industry where we play, we do not have that scale of production that you can say that, oh, that's readily available, but they exist. So yeah, stakeholders, I mentioned before that why I'm identifying the stakeholders is for you to understand who your potential clients are and how you can play. In fact, the reason I am doing this is because I see that sometimes when people want to talk about fashion law, they always take an international standpoint. And I try my best to deviate from that, right? And that's why I'm also very excited when I get to speak at like forums like this, because I get to show you fashion law from an Afrocentric approach. If you go on Google and you talk about fashion law, you probably see Chanel, Zara, and you see a lot of legal battles. But if you look at the fashion industry, fashion law is happening, but it's happening in our own context, right? It's happening the way that our industry is growing. We do not have, good research done, of course, because of our educational system and all of those things that we can't really digest, but that it is happening, right? For instance, if you talk about the various types of business registrations that exist for fashion business, people will list limited liability company businesses and all of that. But I can tell you for a fact that I would start, if you were to ask me, apart from business name, I most likely would mention cooperative society, right? I would mention NGOs, because some fashion businesses actually are registered as cooperative societies because of the reign of sustainability also, right? And their goal. If you look at the fashion industry correctly, you would see that sometimes it's more of impact-driven initiatives that are happening. So how do I position myself as a lawyer? If it's not a business I'm representing, who am I representing? Fashion organizations, there are more. There are a lot of them coming up day by day, coming up with their initiatives to solve a particular problem in the fashion industry. So as a lawyer, if I say, oh, I have this organization I want to set up for people who are going to preserve, and there's something that I want to also say before I forget is, fashion is also about preserving history, right? Most of what we are going to be selling eventually it's going to be our history, right? Our Iro and Buba, the way that we weaved before, our Ashoke, those are our history that will be monetized as fashion, right? And you most likely would have to see organizations that will say, oh, we want to preserve a particular craft. I want to preserve weaving of dried banana leaf or something like that. Most organizations exist. There's a fashion brand in Nigeria. It's called Ekikere. If you look at a particular brand, it looks like a masquerade initiative, to be honest. The clothes are gotten from dried raffias and all of that. That's where they make their clothes from. But if you look at the core of the business, they say that they are preserving a particular part or skill set that existed in the Igbo aspect of Nigeria, right? So a lot of brands are innovating around preservation of their history. So they may not be registered as a limited liability company, they'll be registered as something else, right? Sometimes if they are not exactly a business and that's not, what they want to do, they want to go into other initiatives. So it's important for you to understand how it plays, right? That's why you see that a lot of funding that happen in the fashion industry is more of impact funding, more of charity cases, more of I want this particular grant most of the time, because it's like fashion is seen as, even though I don't like to subscribe to that idea, as a charity work, so to speak. So it's very important for you to understand who the stakeholders are, businesses, designers, technology companies, professional photographers, videographers, celebrities, blog. Because of influencer marketing, a lot of times we have, all of those things that you have seen in recent times with the issues that happen around the fashion industry, right? So yeah, the laws that concern the fashion industry, IP law, of course, even though I say, oh, it's not all of it, it's very foundational, right? But I like people to take a more of a business approach as a fashion lawyer rather than, oh, I'm an IP expert, so I'm in the fashion industry, because sometimes you most likely would be stopped in registration, contract, and that's it. So when they ask you certain things other than that, you can't advise the entire business because it's more. So there is contract law. Of course, you should understand contract and policies. Yesterday we had a case of Diola Sego and her clients, right? Who would ever think that there was a need for your policy to define what custom made is, right? Yes, I know that the businesses that I advise, when they say they are ready to wear brands, if you're familiar with ordering ready to wear brands in Nigeria, you see that they're ready to wear. It's not that I can walk into a store and get it, or I can order now and get it tomorrow. No, they're ready to wear is I'll get it in 15 or 10 days or even 1 month. Right, that's ready to, but that's not exactly the strict definition of ready to wear. Ready to wear is I can walk in, I can order and get it now, today, whenever I need it. But we call ourselves ready to wear, but we're not exactly that. So what that means is that you have to have policies, disclaimers around your fashion business, right? The same thing with custom made. If you say that Diola Sego is selling a custom made dress, right? There are different connotations of custom made that you have to make clear to your client, because sometimes they think that the price point of your dress is because of the designer's dress is because, oh, I'm the only one that will have, like we saw in the case of Diola Sego. You think that, oh, but custom made it has different connotation. It can mean that there's an already existing design that can be modified for you, right? Or there's a collection of ideas that we have and we've put together that you can pick from to form a particular dress, right? So you have to have some disclaimers, you have to have some document explaining this to your client or making them write it, right? If you're going to get exclusive rights, you're going to get no right at all. You have to communicate those things. It cannot be something that you say by the way, especially if you're going to be a luxury brand or advising a luxury brand, right? So it's important for you to understand how contract law works, corporate and company law. Of course, fashion business is a business and the hammer applies, right? So you have to understand how that works. M&As, right? People talk about M&As, right? I've had to explain how it works in the fashion industry. The fashion industry, when you talk about mergers and acquisitions, sometimes we think, oh, it's two brands coming together. No, everybody who is a player in the fashion industry is a brand, right? So if I'm going to be manufacturing glasses, I may not necessarily be Dior, right? But I have the technical skill. I'm a brand. So sometimes Dior just has the name and everybody knows Dior is popular, but they don't know me. But we have the technical expertise. Dior can acquire me, right? So sometimes it's mergers acquisition that is happening across different verticals. It's like vertical integration of businesses where I can acquire a mining company, I can acquire a manufacturing company, so that you do not. And that happens. Mergers acquisitions happen in the fashion industry because I want to seal compete. I don't want anybody to be able to duplicate, because if as a brand, let's say Dior, I go to JIIPCC to manufacture my clothes and other manufacturers are able to go there or have access to JIIPCC to make my clothes, it means that there's going to be floods of counterfeiting, even though somehow, but even if they are contract, there's possibility that they can actually replicate this design for a different brand, right? So a lot of times brands acquire people that play in their ecosystem so that they are the only ones that have the entire pipeline. So you have to understand how corporate law and company law works. You have to understand mergers and acquisition. You have to understand consumer protection. Is really, really big. Fashion industry, most times, is about the consumer, right? So you have to understand the provisions of that law. Data protection, it applies a whole lot. Right now, you can see internationally, people, even now in Nigeria, right, the brands that I represent, you would see that sometimes because it's an e-commerce platform, let me use that, and they are the ones getting direct sales. Some brands want that same data, and you will see that there's always quarrel who should have access to data. The company obviously that have merchants subscribing to their software want to have the data, right? But also the clients and the brands, like the brands themselves, want to also have access to that data. So there's always a conversation about who has the data, right? So you have to understand data protection law. You have to understand who has what, how to draft policies, that governs that particular platform. There's international trade law. International trade law is one of the major areas, of the fashion industry. I would talk about the business model that we have. 80% of our fashion items in Nigeria, or fashion clothing, or whatever we depend on to wear, is secondhand clothing, right? And that is facilitated by international trade, right? The major reason why we have massive importation of secondhand clothing in Nigeria and on the African continent is because we have the AGWA Act, that's the African Growth Opportunity Act, with the US, to make Nigeria sort of like a dumping site, or Africa a dumping site. So we have those things. So you have to understand the application of international laws. You have to understand the AFCTA. You have to understand principles of rules of origin. There was a video that I watched on TikTok where a guy was talking about the fact that Nigerian Italian leather was originally Nigerian leather, which of course I don't know if it's true or not, because he mentioned a particular case that I have no idea of, even though we've researched and we've not found anything on. But that's the reason why that is. The very fact that they can call it Italian leather, it's because there is probably a treaty that governed that particular transaction, because there's a principle of sufficient transformation that is done to a raw material. So if I buy raw material in Ogun State and then I transform that material into a finished product here in Lagos, I can actually say that that particular material originated from Lagos, and that is why a lot of times you can see that there is the labeling requirement. Tell us where you made this product from. That is why there is also the push for supply chain transparency in the fashion industry. So international trade law is what governs that. There is also taxation, right? Every brand, every business obviously has taxes or tax obligations. So you should have that because your client would ask you for that. There's also environmental, I've talked about that, environmental sustainability. That's also something you have to think about. It's also something I'm forgetting. There's also finance, right? Corporate finance. For you to be a good fashion lawyer, especially in this stage, you have to understand because your clients would ask you. You have to understand what it is to do factoring, right? Because usually most designers are looking to fund a particular collection, not necessarily their entire business, but a particular collection. So they want working capital. How do you understand? You have to understand the contracts that apply. You have to understand the brands that are available for that. And usually there are specific venture capital companies that fund only fashion businesses. They exist, right? So you have to know how that works, what documents you're going to be using, angel investment, term sheets, all those many things. You have to know them, right? So yeah, areas I mentioned, this area of service offering. You also have to understand how business plan works. Yes, you have to know, because your clients would ask you, lawyer, can you go through this and know if this is good? So that's why I said that you have to understand the business part. So business plan, supply chain, IP monetization, how can they monetize their IP, taxation, those things. You have to have an idea, because you will provide services along that area. Then yeah, I think I've spent time, so I'll just rush through. So skills that you need knowledge of the law in the fashion industry. You need knowledge of supply chain, fashion councils, right? You have to understand them. You would deal with them. One of the things I would say in my next slide is that the biggest role of a fashion lawyer in the African fashion market is impact. Right now, in the stage that we are, is impact, because we are seeing an industry that is about to blossom, right? So what you're going to be doing is sowing seeds. So you have to understand how, and there are a lot of fashion councils coming up, communities and the likes. You have to be part of them, right? You have to have conversation. They need policies. They need lawyers around that area. So you have to know when they are setting up, how they operate, and join them, right? Supply chain issues, government guidelines, if there are any, and yeah, manufacturing process, apparel process. You just have to know all of those things. You have to understand what is a tech pack. If you're a lawyer, fashion industry, you don't know what a tech pack is. It's important for you to know that, what it means and how you can protect your client, because they share their tech pack everywhere. And tech pack is a holistic document that contains a lot of things regards a protection line. So you have to know how to tell your client that no, you have to send an NDA first before you send a tech pack. So it's your understanding of how the entire ecosystem and levels of production works. Yeah, the laws that apply, additional skills, different things. So just you could look at the slides after. And yeah, I said you have to have an impact mindset in this particular industry, because a lot of collaborations happen and there is no money flying around. A lot of things happen. You can hear that British Council is sponsoring one event and all they give is their logo and there's no money backing it. So as a lawyer, what do you do there? Right. So you really sometimes will have to attach yourself regardless. So that's the things that, I can really say. Then also just build a niche, build a brand around that, and understand and be passionate about the fashion industry as a whole, because it can be very difficult really to break in. But I mean, once you have this mindset, it's a step in the door. Yeah, I mean, I have a masterclass if you're interested in getting more knowledge. So yeah, that's everything that I have to say on fashion law and an overview on that. I hope that you've gotten one or two things or a lot of things from what I've said. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Mrs. Bernice,
Miss
for the
Benz.
insightful session.
Yeah.
And I think all of our mentees were able to learn a thing or two from your session today.
Yeah.
We are really grateful for the time and effort you put into creating this very insightful presentation. So I think we'll take Mr. Shei's presentation, then we'll make room for questions and comments. So Mr. Shei, are you ready for us? Good evening, sir.
All right. Good evening. I'm ready, and I must sincerely appreciate Benny for that presentation that has covered virtually all of the grounds of fashion law that can possibly happen in this meeting, in this conversation. If there's any other thing that she has not said, then we have to go and do that a master's or a PhD to pick that up. So yeah, so many thanks to Bernice for taking time to prepare and then bringing slides, especially to this meeting. It helped to structure the intervention that we had. In my case, I did not have slides to show, and I know you asked me in a couple of times to prepare my slides and share, but I couldn't come up with one. I was pressed for time. I was having some transition in the last couple of weeks, migrating from one phase of my life to the next, but I will just add a few things to what Bernice has said. Like I said, she has covered a lot of ground. I just had a few. So for me, when I was thinking about this today, the first thing that came to mind was that the fashion law business, the fashion business as a business is one of the oldest businesses. As a Christian, we read the Bible of how Adam and Eve were clothed, with leaves when after they've sinned, after their eyes have been opened and they realized that they were naked. So we read how they were covered with clothes. So leaves in this regard now covers of clothes, and that's for me fashion. So it's as old as the creation itself, and it's something that we cannot joke or toy with. It's something that affects everybody. I mean, everybody has something to do with fashion. I'm aware there are still a few places, maybe a few villages in the world where they still don't wear anything, but you can't find them around us. They'll be pretty much far from us. So fashion is for everyone and nobody should be left behind. So as a fashion law practitioner, as a fashion business person, so I'll be talking in capacities now. I'll be speaking to us either as lawyers, as aspirants to the bar, or as fashion business people. So you just pick your own stuff from the few things I'll share, and then we move. So IP protection is key. Copyright is automatic, but now you can still do notification. Trademarks would have to secure your brand. And then there is the industrial design. This one, uh,
Um, am I the only one who can't hear Mr. Shea?
yeah, I can't see that.
Okay. I think he has network challenges.
Hold on. So can you still hear me now?
Okay, he's back.
All right, all right. So deep apologies. Some calls came in from the regular line.
Mr. Shea, you can continue,
Okay.
please.
Oh, great, great, great. So I was talking about okay, yes, I've done the first part, and the next part is about I was talking about industrial design that is more peculiar to fashion. Dennis had mentioned some peculiar things that um fashion designers would have to do to distinguish their work from that of others so that it won't be easily infringed upon. So um in securing your new design, you must be well as a fashion business person. You should be well guided by experts, IP experts, fashion business experts, so not just people who play the game of producing. Advisory is key. Now, so for lawyers in the game, so again, please permit me. I'm driving, but I'm just trying to make the best use of this time. For lawyers in the game, what is in it for you in the fashion law as a business. So you can do advisory, you can be IP watchdog for your client. I want to believe strongly that the big brands that we know today, P&G, the Gucci, the Dolce and Gabbana, and all of them, they would have their IP watchdogs who ensure that before the slightest infringement comes on their product, they are informed, they are aware, and they are well guided. That way, you are preventing your your business from being harassed, damaged, or infringed upon by just anybody. One thing you should also do as a fashion practitioner or business person is to follow trends. You must be aware of what is going on around the globe, what is going on in your own locality, and then so that you should know when to switch from the style you use in your business. You can't stay on a particular lane and expect the world to bow to you. So you must know what is obtainable part time in the business, know when to change gears, and then know when to move and adjust. Then finally, I'll talk about social media. Um, as a fashion person, either as a business or as a lawyer who is into fashion, social media is one place where you can sell your market for free without paying rent. So social media is one place where you can showcase what you know, you can showcase what you're looking for, you can showcase what you do as a fashion person, and then from there you get more engagement, more interaction, and networking also happens a lot on social media. So I'll keep it at this intervention now. Many thanks for having me. Good evening.
Thank you, thank you, Mr. Shea, for all you said. I'm sure we'll be able to get one or two from everything you just said. Really appreciate your time and commitment to the program. So we'll be taking group one presentation. Group one, is your presenter ready for the presentation? Sorry, who is presenting for group one? If group one is not ready, could group two step up to present first?
Group one is ready.
Sorry?
Group one is ready. Can you hear me?
Okay. So the floor is open to group one then. Thank you. Group one, you have 7 minutes for the presentation. So thanks.
Okay. Can you all hear me?
Oh, sure, we can.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Darissa Fortune, and I will be presenting on fashion business and law on behalf of Group One. And first of all, like our mentors have said, when we hear the word fashion, we think of clothes, accessories, bags, shoes, and now we've even heard, makeup and other things are also part of it. And find out that the fashion business and fashion law just um centers on fashion, and then going further, we have intellectual property, which is also a major part of fashion law, and the fashion business can be protected with various aspects of intellectual property, such as trademarks, patents, industrial designs, and so on. There are various IP laws that are available to um, to protect the fashion business. However, in Nigeria here, it is kind of limited a bit, which everyone knows that the fashion industry in Nigeria is like the least one of the least protected areas of law in Nigeria, the fashion business and fashion law as a whole. However, we have certain ways to protect them. That's through the Copyright Act that we have in Nigeria. We have trademarks, we have copyrights, we have design rights, we have the Nigerian Copyright Act. And even if these Copyright Act is there, it still doesn't, really protect the fashion business or the fashion industry the way it ought to be in Nigeria. There are certain setbacks that the fashion industry suffers. And going further, there are patents and then design acts, like our mentors have equally spoken about patents, special designs that are protected, special forms of you know, clothes or whatever it is can be protected by intellectual property. And then we also have trade secrets. Basically, these clothings or these fashion items that we see, there are various ways in which they are created, and these trade secrets too are protected under the law. These trade secrets, most of these fashion industries, they might not really want to disclose the process of how they really like um get to these things, or maybe they don't want their workers to go and close to their competitors that, oh, this is how we do things here. So trade secrets are also part of it. And then the challenges in protecting IP in fashion, you have counterfeiting, which is a major challenge, especially in Nigeria, where people produce products and try to pass it off as the product of the original creator. Like when you go to the market, you see Gucci, you see Balenciaga, but they are not really products of that company. That is counterfeiting, and it is a very huge disadvantage because it causes a lot of um, things to the original owners. We can see economic loss, brand loss of their reputation, and all of that. We also have piracy. Piracy and counterfeiting are closely related, but they are not the same thing. Counterfeiting has to do with, creating a product and passing it off as the product of the original owner. However, piracy is basically stealing a designer's product and saying, this is mine, this is now, my product. So piracy and counterfeiting are one of the major setbacks of IP laws, when it comes to protection of the fashion business. And especially in Nigeria, due to the way our laws are, I don't think we have really gotten there yet where we can fully protect our fashion brands as well as international fashion brands from these counterfeiting. Because where do we want to start? To start suing these people and all of that. And then going further, we also have what we call licensing. And licensing has to do with maybe fashion brands or these companies giving other people the permission to create or to create their products or to make use of maybe their logo or their words in there, just basically giving them that permission that, okay, you can produce this product, sale and all of that. And it is a very huge aspect of the fashion business licensing. They give them license, and it is that license that ensures that, okay, I'm not breaching this person's intellectual property, right? Licensing has a lot of advantages. The owner or the creator of these forms of arts or these fashion products, they can earn revenue. And if they are not able to, let's say, they are not able to finance mass production of their item which they have created, they can give someone else the license to do that. We put an example here of the agreement between Michael Kors and the Fossil Group, where they entered into an agreement. Okay, you guys can produce and distribute our branded watches, our jewelries, and all of that. And in return, the Fossil Group, they pay some kind of some kind of revenue. They pay the Michael Kors brand, and then the Michael Kors brand also, they kind of like regulate, okay, we don't want the product to be like this, we want the product to be like this, just to, let's say, scratch my back and I scratch your back, basically. So all of this are also like a major part of the fashion business. So basically, we have learned from our mentors. We have heard a lot about the fashion industry, and Group One has also done what we can with regards to this. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much, Group 2, for putting in the fine efforts and the cooperation into making your presentations. That was really enlightening. Mrs. Bernice, I see you're still on the call. I don't know if you
Okay,
have.
sorry to cut in. We just took Group 1's presentation. We still have Group 2 to go.
Okay, that's fine. All right, Group 2, are you ready? Please, you could take over.
Good evening, I'm ready.
Yes, please go ahead and share your screen and start your presentation.
Okay. Sorry, I'm trying to share my screen. Can you see my screen?
No, we can't. Please, you can kindly start your presentation. You can kindly start your presentation. I would share your screen on your behalf, but kindly start the presentation.
Okay, thank you. My name is Christmas. I'm presenting on behalf of Group 2. So our presentation today is just a continuation of Group 1's presentation. We're going to be discussing 4 aspects of fashion business and law. The 4 aspects are financing, distribution, infringement and enforcement, and contracts. The first aspect we're discussing today is financing. Basically, I know we all know what financing is. Financing is basically just the money that we need to start our business. Financing is one of the key components in any business. And just like any other business, fashion requires a good amount of finance and capital. Yeah, so we have different stages of financing. We have different stages of please, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. So we have different stages of financing. We have the initial stage, we have the early stage, and we have the growth stage. For the initial stage is basically just when you have a fair idea of all the resources you need to bring your business forward. It's just about knowing how to start up your business and steps that you take in order to start up that business. Some of the steps at this stage include saving, your friends and family, bank loans, grants, and trust. The next stage we have is the early stage. This is just trying to get money or basically the financing of the business. We have crowdfunding, angel investors, factoring. Crowdfunding is just when you get funds for your project by raising contributions from different numbers and from large numbers of people. This is mostly done through the internet. We have things like GoFundMe and the rest that people can use here. We have angel investors. This is just basically wealthy people that usually take interest in some types of businesses and they decide to support by factoring. Then the last stage we have here is the growth stage. Growth stage is basically just investors that look for businesses with high potentials and good management to invest in. So growth stage is basically the investment stage. Then we have the funding and investment opportunities for fashion entrepreneurs in Nigeria. We have small and medium enterprise development agency. This was established in 2003 to promote development of small mid-scale businesses in Nigeria economy. We have Tony Elumelu Foundation. I think this one is one of the most popular ones in Nigeria. This foundation has trained over 1.5 million. This foundation has trained over 1.5 million young Africans and has disbursed direct funding to 18,000 women and men in Africa. Then we also have loans from foreign investors and financial institutions like the Development Bank of Africa, the Bank of Industry, Afremix, and so many other banks. Then the next subheading here is distribution. I think we all know what distribution is. Distribution is basically the process of dispersing products throughout the marketplace to the consumers rather. Distribution is the process of making goods and services available to the end customers. Under distribution, we have the channel of distribution. The channel of distribution is basically the network goods and services pass through until they reach the final buyer. We have various channels of distribution. We have various channels for distribution of fashion products in Nigeria. We have self-distribution and wholesale distribution. The next subheading here is the various components for distribution. We have distributors. These distributors are simply the people that buy the fashion designs directly from the fashion entrepreneur, their stores. They buy it directly to sell to the retailers and the handle delivery. Their work is basically to reduce the operational burden, stress, and cost. Then we have agents and representatives who serve as ambassadors for the businesses. We have dealers. They are basically intermediaries who buy products from the distributors and they resell them to other intermediaries. We have the retailers. Retailers are the ones that buy from the distributors and then sell to the masses generally, that's the end consumers. Then we have e-commerce platforms. These are platforms that enable sale and distribution of fashion products directly to consumers. We have things like Jumia and the rest, where you can just go there, an online platform, and select whatever design or whatever product you want, and it gets directly delivered to you. Then we have a distribution agreement. The word agreement is self-explanatory. When seeking to distribute products through retailers or wholesalers, a distribution agreement is essential. A distribution agreement is simply a contractual agreement between the distributor and the retail outlet that establish and set the guidelines for the trading relationship. A distribution agreement must contain certain things, which include the payment information, the payment terms, renewal process, termination terms, effective exit strategies. These are what distribution agreements must contain. Also, there are specific clauses in case of anything that the distribution agreement must include. We have the intellectual property rights to protect the fashion company's intellectual property rights, like their trademarks, copyright, and patents. We have fashion company rights to terminate. That is, the fashion company can choose to terminate. There must be a clause where if the fashion company chooses to terminate the distribution agreement, the terms of delivery must be stated there, the distributor's obligations, the reserved channels, classification of products, and the renewal of agreements. Then enforcement of intellectual property rights in the fashion industry. We have some enactments that have been put in place. For instance, we have the Nigerian Copyright Law, Trademark Act, and Design Act. These have been enacted to protect fashion works in Nigeria and the works of creatives generally. Then we have importance of this enforcement. The first importance we have here is preservation of creative integrity. This simply prevents unauthorized duplication and alteration of a creative's work. I don't know if we've heard of a popular designer in Nigeria, Tsuboshi, the fashion designer. Recently, she put out a memo that nobody, even if you're doing it in good faith, but nobody should recreate any of her designs. So this enforcement or enactment, rather, will help to protect her creative integrity, which means nobody can recreate those designs that she has specifically stated that should not be created. The person will be facing punishment. Second importance here we have is promotion of innovation. Through providing incentives for production and distribution of unique fashion designs and the rest. This basically promotes the innovations. Then we have modes of enforcement. Fashion brands have the authority to issue cease and desist letters that demand that any unapproved reproductions of their work or alterations or anything like that can be removed. So this is basically when you can remove when you don't authorize or give permission for your work to be posted somewhere, you can issue a cease and desist for it to be removed. For example, if your work is posted on Pinterest without your permission, you can inform them and then your work will be removed, your fashion design will be removed. Also, we have fashion brands may request the removal of copyrighted photographs or design tags from internet platforms by submitting takedown notifications under the Copyright Act 2022. This also goes, if your work is posted on a blog or something, you can tell them and then your work will be removed. Then we have legal action. Fashion brands may file copyright infringement lawsuits against counterfeits. They'll demanding monetary demands and injunction, infringing the products and materials and destruction. I don't know if we heard about this a recent collapse case between Ashlocks, popular brand Ashlocks, and a musician who was called out for allegedly wearing a fake design rather. The design was originally from Ashlocks. Yes. And then yes, it was told not to tag the brand because it was wearing a fake imitation. Then we have customs enforcement. Yes, so in order to stop importation of fake goods, many nations usually permit trademark owners to register their trademarks with the customs authorities, that's like the customs and borders. So to reduce the amount of counterfeit goods that are in the market or brought into a country. The next subheading we have is infringement. Infringement here is under 3 subheadings. We have copyright infringement, trademark infringement, and design piracy. Copyright infringement is simply when someone imitates a copyrighted fashion design, logo, or any other fashion work without the permission of the creative. Common examples we can see around us include counterfeiting, producing knockoffs, just like the Ashlocks example I gave earlier, unauthorized reproduction of textile prints, uncredited use of fashion photographs. We have trademark infringement. This involves the unauthorized use of trademarks that is identical or confusingly similar to registered trademarks. You know, when a similar trademark is used or something so similar to mislead, it can mislead consumers into thinking they are buying from a particular designer, whereas they are buying just a fake imitation from one designer in one market in Aba or somewhere. We have design piracy. Design piracy infringement is refers to the replication of fashion designers that are substantially similar to original creations without obtaining licenses. For instance, we see all these fine clothes on Instagram and then you give your tailor to make something similar for you. That is design piracy. We have contracts in fashion, business, and law. Basically, a contract is simply a legally binding agreement between two or more parties. Simply put, a contract is a promise that is enforceable by law. A contract is enforceable by law. So, in relation to fashion, a fashion contract is a legally binding agreement that governs the relationship in the fashion industry, relationships, the transactions, businesses, everything in the fashion industry. These contracts are very essential when it comes to defining rights, expectations, responsibilities, obligations of the parties involved, whether they are the manufacturers, designers. It just helps to define their rights, responsibilities, to in order for there not to be conflict or disagreement whatsoever. Then we have the legal framework that protects fashion and design industry in Nigeria. We have the Copyright Act. Section 1 of the Copyright Act provides that it provides for this, but this protection is not really cannot really be enforceable in Nigeria today because um it says something about multiplication by industrial processes. So obviously this Copyright Act needs some form of review and amendment to fit and be able to cater to Nigerians' booming fashion industry. We also have um for trademark, we have the Trademark Act. Section 9 of this act states that any trademark any trademark that is being registered must pass the distinctiveness test. And this must pass the distinctiveness test. This is just basically so brands can be protected. Okay, we all know a trademark is basically a label or a tool of identification or distinction for a particular brand. Failures to cooperate with these stipulations will result in the loss of all rights that the owner may have accrued. Then we have industrial designs. Here says recourse can be made to the Patents and Designs Act where protection cannot be gotten through copyright. Protecting the design as an industrial design is workable. However, under Section 13, industrial designs can now be registrable. They just have to satisfy to requirements. That is, the industrial design must be new. That is, it must not have been used in relation to any other thing or products before, and it must not be contrary to public order and public morality. The law protects sketches and drawings of fashion designers or illustrators through instruments known as copyright. So basically, all these enactments just help to protect the rights of creatives and fashion designers and the fashion industry today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Sorry. Thank you so much, Group 2, for your insightful presentation and for the effort put into it. So we'll be taking comments from our mentor. Mrs. Bernice, please, do you have anything to say regarding group 1 and group 2's presentation?
Yeah. Okay. So it's Miss Bernice, not Mrs. But yeah, my comments. I don't know. I have to say that I've actually mentored for many seasons or sessions, and I think that this is one of the best representation that I've seen so far. In fact, the best. What I'm saying so is because usually people just come read what they have on the slides, but the two presenters actually try to explain what they understood and then also give Nigerian examples of what is happening. And I mean, that's what I've been saying since you have to actually have knowledge of the business to be able to explain. Usually, I see people just go on Google, download and then just want to pour it and all of that. But sometimes it's better to do a presentation that you understand, that you don't have to read, you know, every single thing, but you can also give examples, cite different examples of what you've actually seen happen. It makes more sense than just reading. The only thing that I would say is for more context, I think that you should probably talk about fashion retailing more, fashion retailing and e-commerce. A lot of um, retailing activities happen here more than even franchise or franchise or what's the other thing, licensing. A lot of times most brands, like for instance, if you look at Andrea, for example, she does a lot of things, right? She makes obviously clothes, she also makes earrings, she also makes shoes, right? I mean, not makes, but the brand sells those things. But we do not know that. We don't know if she licensed that to somebody. Obviously, she got a manufacturer to do that. So usually, many fashion businesses are still doing a lot of their production in-house. So what I see happen, if you want to mention the mechanism of the law that exists, is usually retailing um, e-commerce now with technology. So when you talk about e-commerce, you're looking at brands like Industrial Africa. I don't know if you know about that brand, but they are like the biggest distribution of fashion products in the world, African fashion products, right? I think they are based in the US, but they target African market solely for that, right? So you can look at that, you can see that they do that. There's concept stores. So when you talk about retailing, there's also concept stores around in that concept store, you see Ashlogs. Ashlogs, for instance, is a two-sided brand. They have their brand and they are also a retailer of luxury fashion in Nigeria. So you look at them as a concept store because they put all of those things together. They source from different designers across the world and they sell in Lagos. There is Polo Avenue, right? There is Inkata. Those are Nigerian brands that we sell Nigerian products, right? Then if you talk about distribution, I think we should talk about it more of like stockists, right? People who actually stock, because usually Nigerian brands are stocked across different showrooms, right? So the people that will do that, you should look at the contract between the brands and their stockists, right? Yeah. Then is what else would I want to give context to? Yeah, then obviously e-commerce brand. You have the youths, you have the youths are like the biggest. You have Jumia, but I know the youths have, this thing. You have there's other brand I'm trying to remember. I can't, but they have all of those things. Then we talk about financing too. There are other brands that are very, so when you talk about, yes, when you mention things about funding of fashion, I tell you for a fact that there are other specialized, very specialized people who actually focus on the fashion industry. There is Bri Remain venture capital there and Ivorian company that funds fashion business largely in Africa. So you can look at them. There is Folklore too. Folklore is also, they used to be an e-commerce brand, but now they've moved into pivoted into um, providing finances for fashion brands. So you can mention those to just give you concept. The truth is, you have to know, for you to get how fashion law applies, I always say, look at what Nigerian and African businesses are doing. If you can identify those companies, you can see what they do to fund. I can also remember IFAC. IFAC is also one of the biggest funders of fashion businesses on the African continent. So you can look at this. Once you see them, you most likely can identify. There's also Lagos and Paris collaboration too, right? So look at what fashion businesses are doing locally, and you can get a grasp of, oh, this is what applies. Franchise happens, yes, generally, and I know that if you go on Google, you see it's normal. That's a concept that exists generally, regardless of whether it's the fashion industry or not. But what is peculiar to us and what we are seeing happen is, and then I think franchise and license, it's also, I mean, that happens too, but there are other brands that have, bought franchise of different brands and still in Nigeria. Yes, that whatever. But most of the time, if you want to talk about indigenous brands, I think it's more of, concept stores that they come up with. Alara Lagos is a concept store, Zinkata is a concept store, Grey Velvet is a concept store. So once you see those people, you can easily just identify that this is how it is happening. These are our own designers are doing, because they're very peculiar people. This is how they are doing their own thing. So not necessarily the way that it is done internationally, right? So yeah, I mean, I think the presentation was really great, and I like the fact that they were very, not just reading the slides and just really explaining. So those are like my 2 cents. I mean, if you have any questions, you can ask. I'll be willing to, respond.
Okay, thank you so much, Ma, for your contribution. To the mentees, I don't know if you have any questions for Miss Bernice. You could also
I have
drop
a
your
question.
questions on the platform, and or someone can unmute to speak.
Please, I have a question.
Okay, please.
Okay. Can a fashion designer remake an outfit? I don't know, this is in relation to a popular drama that is going on right now, but like, can a fashion designer remake an outfit that was previously made for another client if there was no prior agreement signed that that outfit to be reserved for that particular client?
Okay. I think I think we already did like a publication on that. You can read it all, but I'll just really explain. I mentioned before that certain concepts have different definitions internationally and also the African definition because of the way that we operate. I mentioned that ready to wear normally in the strict sense of it internationally, it means that it is ready to wear. It means I can get it now. Customization or custom made clothes or bespoke clothes are clothes that are made to suit, have to. In fact, I'll tell you from my research and from my experience, customization, they have 2 different definitions, right? Customization can happen when you have a design as a designer, you've created that design. However, when Bernice comes to you, Bernice is saying, I like this design, but I think I want the hand to be puff. I want some sleeves here, and I want peplon. It is still your design, but the person made a modification to it. Also, custom made can also mean that you sat down and you collaborated with this particular client, understood what they wanted, and you created it for them. Either ways, right? The designer still has the rights in the work, regardless. I mean, the law really says that we don't produce ideas, right? So even if this client is telling you about the ideas, the designer is the one that's going to actually give life to that idea. So obviously they are the creator, right? But in this scenario, I've looked at the case and I think that Diola Sego actually has released that collection in 2021, right? She released that collection in 2021, and the designer or the client came in 2022. Obviously, if you go through the Diola Sego's page, you can see that for every design that she made for a bride, she mentioned that there was a modification done for that particular bride. So she would say this design is called Bernice. Generally, when we release the collection, it's called Bernice. But when I did it for Gypsy said she wanted puff hand and flay and all those things. So I've modified that original design to something else. And then she names it. Just go through her page. You will see that every of their posts made by a bride, there's what they do there and they write modification for. So it actually means that they recognize the fact that their inputs of the clients came into it, whatever that is, like came into the work and maybe they wanted something different or a twerk somewhere, whatever it is. But looking at the entire case, a designer can decide to do that as long as they have IP, and usually the designer will have IP. There's no client on this earth that would be thinking, except because now that IP laws are really, I don't think there's any Nigerian client that will go and tell their tailor that, oh no, after you made the clothes, I want all the IP rights in the dress. When you're not a manufacturer, when you're not the so most of them will not do that. So usually the rights remains with the designer. So I don't think the other Sego was wrong. The only thing is that we have a very funny knowledge. We do not have sufficient knowledge of how fashion business works and the definition. So the client was basically operating on an assumption, right? And I also know for a fact that Diola Sego's designs were already registered as industrial design before anybody it was released. She has always done that from the beginning. You know, when she released her campaign, you can see that she writes it there. My designs have been copyrighted and whatever that is. So if she protected her original design that was released in 2021, and then the client came in, did a modification, it's still her product and she has a right to replicate. The problem is we do not understand some fashion concept or fashion like custom made, bespoke, and the likes. And to be honest, also, Diola Sego is not a baby in the industry. She's one of the leaders, right? So obviously, as at when her pieces were going for some kind of prices that I can't even imagine. So I'm sure that people think that because they were paying a certain price point, they thought it was going to be exclusivity, but I don't think so. I really don't think that any designer would give anybody exclusivity over their designs because they should, no, nah. And most brides would not obviously want to pay, so I don't think so. So yeah, a designer can actually do that she has like IP rights in that particular work. So yeah, I hope I answered that question. And like if you want very detailed work explaining that, it's on our Instagram page, LinkedIn, and Twitter. You could read it up more.
Okay.
So I see that.
Thank you so much, and Miss Bernice, for that to the question. Please, who else has questions?
Good evening. I have a question. Can anybody hear me?
Okay.
Okay, please go ahead.
I also have a question.
Okay.
Okay, please.
Yeah.
Sorry, please, could we also drop our questions in the chat box so that as Miss Bernice?
I'm sorry, I can barely. Can anybody hear me? My network is fluctuating.
Yes, we can hear you actually. I'm just saying if anyone has additional questions, we could drop it on the chat box so that when Mrs. Bernice is replying to one, I can also read out the other when she's done.
Okay. Good evening, ma'am. Thank you very much for that beautiful presentation. Sorry, my question is on this fashion industry issue between inspiration and imitation. I mean, we all know that there's really nothing new in the industry, but creating a design that, there was a popular issue that we had to, as the IP expert, I had to just do my research. But how can, for instance, I want to advise my client to protect a designs or something like that against anybody claiming inspiration that's kind of come out as an imitation? What are the strategies or IP strategies I can put in place around that client or advise around that brand, so to say? Again, another thing I also want to ask Ma is, in this industry is just coming up, so there's a lot of contractual issues coming up between the designer and the consumer, and also in the training, people that want to learn in industry. I mean, I have a mentor, you want to go and learn from that designer as a mentee, but during your mentorship, you have to create a dress for a particular client, and then at the end of the day, what's it called? The credit is going to the mentee as the designer, and so how do you vent out that? Is it normal in the industry? Is it something that the mentee can claim my intellectual property or whatever compensation for actually putting on the work? I mean, at the end of the day, is the mentor that will get paid and get credit for what the mentee has done. So in that kind of situation, those are the situations or challenges I've come to meet one or twice as a lawyer, and they're asking me what to do. But that cases, I'm not even sure of the advice I gave. I just gave an advice as a legal expert or something. So I would like to decide, ma.
Yeah, so the first question, right? I'll tell you, they are fashion brands, they are tailors, and they are designers, right? So what do I mean by that? They are fashion brands in the sense that they are people that want to actually build a brand more than just tailoring. They want to have a name that can expand towards different areas. So Dior is not just a fashion brand, it's a designer brand that sells anything that falls under fashion, lifestyle, luxury, and the likes. So there are people in Nigeria who are building that kind of brand. And there is the tailors and there are the designers, right? A designer, according to principle of fashion business and everything else, should not be replicating anybody's design. You should be able to tell your so what does the IP law says? For you to enjoy IP, it has to be original. First, you have to advise your clients when releasing a collection. Now, I'm not talking about tailors yet. I'm just talking about designers. If they have a brand, when they are releasing their collection, right, there has to be some level of originality. Now, I don't like when people say, "Oh, there's nothing that exists in the fashion industry," or whatever, whatever. That's true on a generic level. However, people impute their creativity into things, and because people are copying it. For instance, we have all worn agbada. We knew how agbada was, but the moment Ugomoye started making his own agbada, we all knew as Nigerians that this was different, even though it's generally agbada. Do you get? So the problem that I have with designers is not trying to be creative. And I don't blame them anyway, because most people are doing it from a place of I need to eat and I'm sewing clothes, I'm a tailor. So those ones are there. They are tailors and they are just there to replicate and do whatever that is. So if you're representing those kind of people, of course, maybe they don't care about IP rights. If you tell them to make a Vicky James dress, they will replicate it, whatever they like. But for people who are building brands and are, fashion designers are building, they are not supposed to be replicated. So when they are releasing their collection, it means that some creativity goes into their work. They twerk it. There's the way that they do, even if it is regular hand. Check. Just look at Diola Sego. What she's doing it's not exactly anything novel. So I want you guys to remove your mind that there is a novelty obligation of designers. We don't want to see anything we have not seen before because we can't. But we want to see that they are adding their touch towards what, like, look at it's a Mustafari. She was the one who started doing Oleku from, she has moved to Agbada now with chiffon and the likes. You can see that there is growth and difference. Yes, the basic concept of what she's designing is generic because it's our regular wear, but you can see that there is some work done to it. It's the same thing with other brands, right? Serious brands, they take their time, they think about the outfit. I think the brand you're even talking about might be Desiree Yama. Desiree Yama, when she started, look at her dress, look at her touch. You can see that they have a particular aesthetics, right? So if you say that, oh, the clothes is always on Pinterest. No, how did you know the clothes was already on Pinterest? It's because you saw Desiree Yama dress and then you were able to identify it when you saw that somebody has duplicated it. I don't know if you get the point, right? So every designer, real designer, actually sits down to think about their brand. So every time I tell my people that for me to play here, you have to have original design. And it's not like it's not something that we need to see your creativity in every aspect. Aside that, also, there is the need for textile development. So people, what we see with regular designers and tailors is that they go and buy plain materials and they sew. When you do that, you obviously don't enjoy any copyright anywhere because it's basic. But most designers now are designing from the scratch. What that means, although it's very expensive, but that's the best way. They are actually designing their fabric. So even if they want to make a turtleneck that everybody knows, they would use their own fabric to create it. And when you do that, it means that your design has double layered protection under IP rights, under copyright, and also under industrial design. Look at, for instance, Banke Kuku. Look at her design. Just go. And that's why I encourage people, look at what Nigerian brands are doing, and you can easily tell the law that will apply. Banke Kuku's clothes are pattern materials. You can see that every dress she makes has that. In fact, she's selling the fabric itself. That's what she's protected. So that is already protected under textile design copyright. So you can't replicate that. So even if you make the style, you would not get that particular dress because the design itself is copyrighted. So you have to learn, and that's what they call IP strategy. I get it that sometimes you are just representing some designers that are really basic. Nothing bad with that, but they do not enjoy copyright if you're going to be duplicating or just making basic. Or any solid brand that wants to come up with solid designs, you have to advise them that they have to be novel, innovative, and daring, because that's when they enjoy. No, sorry, they have to be original, not novel, right? In the look at the last collection of my Atafo, the same thing too. He changed his logo, and all of his prints have that now because he's trying to enjoy the brand equity. Do you get? So it's maybe not all of the designs might have those things, but it is important for you to start from the scratch. The same thing too with a very popular brand, sustainable brand, Unko. Unko invented the Dakala clothing. She's a Nigerian brand, right? They make their own textile through recycled material, right? So that, of course, is patent, trade secrets. And so even if you buy a dress from them, the fabric itself, we don't even know how to trace it because they created their own textile from, not even design, they created the material itself. So that's trade secret, that's patent, and every other thing. So it really depends on the kind of brand that you're representing, really, before blah blah. But generally, right, for regular tailors, forget about it. They are infringing, but there's not about anybody who's going to be coming up with brands. At least they should actually invest. And that's what they call textile banks, right? Most of them may not, that's what Kai Collective and some other one Fuga and all of that. That's what they do, right? They go to a textile bank and they buy off the designs, right? The textile bank will make the designs and then use it to, so you see all those prints that are all bloody and different. They create all of those things. They're artistic work that they turn into fabric that you can buy it and own the IP full time, right? So yes, I mean, we just pray that the industry gets bigger. It is getting, because I know that there are a lot of textile banks, textile designers, different people. Our direct tool is also textile designs, right? So it's also something to be protected. But of course, there's a lot of conflict, a lot of IP protection issues that people are not. Designers don't have money, so and it's stressful protecting. So and then of course when they meet lawyers say, oh, no protection. So they are just there out there saying nothing is original, everybody can steal from everybody, which of course is not true. Yeah, then you asked me a second question about, I'm trying to remember what the second question was now. Can you remind me, please?
Yes, ma'am. I asked in the situation of a mentee and a mentor in fashion industry.
Yeah, so there are different ways to protect IP, right? There's the contractual protection and also the one that the law by registration, what the law says, right? Contracts are a way to. So if you're working with a designer, obviously you're supposed to sign a contract that you're going to assign all your IP to the business, except of course you don't want that, then you don't work with them. So if there's a contract that states, and usually you advise your businesses to do that, if there's a contract that states that everything that you create under me belongs to the company, of course, whatever you create there belongs to the company, except of course there's no contract, then the IP still remains with the mentee, really. But I will always advise businesses, if I'm representing businesses, to own all of their IP, as everybody, even down to your social media manager, is assigning IP rights to you, because you don't want any issues. Your photographer, everybody's assigning IP rights to you.
Thank you very much, Ma. That's it. Thank you, Ma.
So somebody wanted to ask a question, I think a guy. Is this still on the call?
Yes, that's it.
Okay.
I have Mo. Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening.
Hello, can anybody hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh yeah, thank you, ma'am. So you mentioned a masterclass ongoing, the one you're doing or you're about to do.
Oh yes.
Can you please give us more information for someone?
Okay. So we have the fashion law masterclass that holds every year. To be honest, we've concluded the one for 2024, right? That was in July. However, I mean, we have one coming up next year, first quarter of next year. So that was what I think I did a presentation here, last quarter, right? So that's why I had that particular slides there. But I mean, if you want to register, we have like a link on our Instagram. You can find it there. So basically, it's me breaking down all of the laws and every regulation that you will actually meet during your course. So it's a very holistic class where you hear every single thing in a more broad way, a more practical way. You get to see documents, you get to see, IP in action, contracts and sustainability. All of the areas that I have probably had experience in the fashion industry is all documented in the Fashion Law Masterclass. So, I mean, if you're interested, on our Instagram page, there's a direct link to either register, or you can send me a DM on Instagram and I'll send you the link to register. But I mean, we're not taking any registration for this year. Again, it's going to be next year first quarter. But then again, we also have our annual conference still coming up in November 2nd, precisely, in Lagos. So if you're interested, you can sign up and show up, and we'll be having conversations around all of this stuff. So yeah. Yes.
Thank you very much. Sorry, your Instagram handle.
Yes, Fashion Law Institute, Nigeria. Yeah, so we share a lot of resources and materials on issues around the fashion industry. So yeah. So I mean, that's gonna be all of the questions, right? I hope that you guys got something from.
Okay. Sorry, Ma. I think there's still one person raising their hands.
Okay.
I can see Olamide Priscilla. Right. So Priscilla, please, you can go ahead and ask your question if you do have a question.
Okay. Good evening, Ma, and thank you for your presentation. My network has been going up and on, so I don't know if someone has asked a question that relates to what I'm about to ask. But my question is for tailors, the basic tailors that you have that go to recreate dresses that you see from designers like this. Can those designers, maybe after your tailor in, I don't know, Baile recreates that design for you and they see that, can they sue the tailor for doing that because they are copying their design, maybe a design from their collection? And though you've mentioned that some of these designers, they go as far as creating their own textile right from the scratch, so they are not just going to buy fabric and then make the design. So it goes both ways. But can that happen? Can they decide to sue the tailor?
Yes. So the tailors are infringing, clearly, straight. That's not. I get that question a lot. Tailors are infringing on the right. It's like the role that the tailors are playing. It's like when Rema sings a song, and then I start going to burn it on CDs to make multiple copies and sell to people. That's infringement, even though it doesn't look like, it's a song, it's basic, it's just something. That's a role that tailors are playing here. They see a designer, and because they have the craft, they just duplicate. However, right, in law, you don't sue men of straw. So usually, right, tailors, they don't have money. Litigation is expensive. So usually you won't find anybody going to court for that. But is it infringement? Yes. Is it theft? I'm of the opinion that it is. Clearly it is, but because of sentiment and the very fact that we have a very funny culture of oppressing designers in Nigeria and brands, right? It might not necessarily fly, but usually it is by law. The only thing is that does the designer have money to push it? Do you know? Except, of course, it's a serious design, a major design, like the one that we have with Diola Sego and people replicating Akomole designs, or Ngumoye's Agbada. I would want to see how that will play out. And I definitely know that I have a strong feeling that the law will be there, but most designers don't try to do that because, of course, it's expensive. How much is the design? How much is the court case? How much is the lawyer? And that's why we do not have precedents, right? Internationally, you find solid brands who have money pushing their case 5 years, 10 years, because they want to set precedents and because they know how much they are making. But here, it's quite difficult because most tailors don't know how much they have, how much can they even pay in damages, right? Sometimes I just stay in my room and just pray that one designer will wake up and just sue so that we can have laws, precedents, and case laws actually, but we don't have that just because of the financial constraint and the very fact that we do not have a dedicated tribunal or court just for this kind of thing. Because if there was, it would have made it faster. But the very fact that you have to spend 5 years, in 1 year, you've not even done service of initial originating process, it can be very exhausting. So that's why they don't actually sue. But IP cases internationally, you see that this actually flies. Elements of fashion designs can be projected, industrial designs can be projected. You have your rights there, but it's just that brands don't have the financial wherewithal to actually do litigation. So I hope that answers the question.
All right. Thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you very much, Ma, for the insightful session for today. I'm sure our mentees have been able to learn so much from you. And also thanks to Mr. Sheyi, even though he's not on the call right now. I think we'll be rounding up our sessions for today at this junction. I really appreciate your time and effort put into joining today and your wonderful presentation and your insightful answers to our mentees' questions. And I think I'll reach out to you later on to get your Instagram handle to share with them, because I think I'm seeing on the chat box someone requesting for that. So you kindly share that with me and I'll share that to them on the group. So really appreciate you, ma'am, and thank you very much. So we've come to the end of today's session. So do have a lovely night. And please, our mentees, don't forget to share whatever you've learned today on your social media platforms and tag your mentors too. Thank you very much and good night.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.